Oh, it's my favorite time of year. Yes, the Christmas holiday season, and my favorite time to play video games, taking some time off work, relaxing with the family, kicking back, and digging through some amazing games. And I figured, you know what? I'd kind of walk down nostalgia lane and kind of talk about my favorite Christmas gaming memories in today's episode. And you guys let me know down below, like, what are some of your favorite Christmas memories growing up, things you remember the most, the games that you were playing on certain Christmas mornings that still stick in your brain. So I thought I would just talk about it today because there's been so many great Christmas mornings that I can be thankful for from my parents. And it's funny for me, like games that I didn't even think that I wanted or asked for, they somehow wound up under the Christmas tree. Santa. And I ended up loving these games, but I don't ever recall asking for these games, which is kind of funny. So I can thank my parents for a lot of these amazing video games that they were able to give me over the years. So I just want to go back. Let's go back to the Nintendo Entertainment System. Even before that, though, the Atari, I remember, I don't know if it was a Christmas, though. I remember my father bringing home the Atari 2600, and he was a bit of a nerd. I mean, he loved computers, he loved video games, and it was strange to me because I didn't know anything about these things, and he brought home and hooked up the Atari 2600, and then for years in the early 80s playing the Atari 2600. I mean, every game from Adventure to Defender. Oh my god, Defender, I put so many hours into that game. Yes, I had the E.T. game, which was absolutely awful. Pac-Man, Mario Brothers. So many of these classic games I played like crazy on the original Atari 2600 and absolutely loved it. But it wasn't until, of course, the Nintendo Entertainment System came out that everything changed. And of course, it launched in 1985, but it was pushed really big in 1986.
The Nintendo Entertainment System, where video technology is more than a game.
And for a lot of my friends in my neighborhood in Pennsylvania, we didn't get the Nintendo Entertainment System until like 1987. It was really the summer, late summer and into fall of 1987 that the Nintendo Entertainment System kind of took over our neighborhood. It was the talk of the town. And it's kind of funny that we didn't really, maybe we're just a little too young, I guess, to really be talking about it in 1985, 1986, when it first was getting on the scene. And it's funny because even at that time, I was still getting Atari games for holidays, for Christmas and Easter. Like here's a photo of my sister and I on Easter morning in my Easter basket, still getting Atari games in my Easter basket and loving it. And you can see here, Demons to Diamonds is the name of the game for the Atari 2600. And so my friend Ben got the Nintendo Entertainment System in late 1987, in the fall of 1987. And I just remember that fall when the leaves were starting to change and the days were getting shorter. I would ride my bike over to his house and just play Super Mario Brothers with him nonstop. And you know that it was nighttime, but it was like 5 p.m. because the days had changed, the daylight saving time. And I just was obsessed with the Nintendo Entertainment System, and frankly, so jealous that my friend Ben got this system and I didn't have it yet. So I was doing everything I possibly could in the lead up to Christmas. I wasn't counting on getting it for Christmas at all. Like I thought this was going to be a really expensive item that I could not afford. So I was raking leaves like crazy. Then it started to snow, and I would go door to door asking people, can I shovel their walkways for like a few dollars? So I was shoveling like crazy during snowstorms and trying to make as much money as I could in order to buy my own Nintendo Entertainment System. Like I wasn't even thinking about Christmas. I didn't even think it was an option. Like I just thought it was too expensive. Like I'm not gonna even ask my parents for it. It's just out of the realm of possibility. So I probably made like $30, $40 saving up money, shoveling and raking leaves all through that fall of 1987. But I knew that there were some big games that had launched, and I was super excited to try them for the first time. Like Metroid, of course, came out in the late summer of 1987. And then wouldn't you know it, like, well, as the fall was unfolding, this is a funny story because I still had my Atari 2600. And my friend Ben had Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And I thought in my childhood brain that if I played Mario Brothers on the Atari 2600 and finished the game, like on the Atari, that then it would like, I would get like New Game Plus, that it would become Super Mario Brothers, meaning, oh, I have to just finish the whole cartridge and then I'll get to play Super Mario Brothers. And I won't need a Nintendo Entertainment System because I've already got an Atari and I've got the Mario Brothers cartridge. So yeah, I'll finish all of these levels. I don't know how many levels there were, like hundreds, God knows. And then I would warp zone to Super Mario Brothers. It never happened, but I put a lot of hours into trying to get it to happen. And I don't know that I ever admitted this to my parents, but anyway, it was pretty funny. So then Christmas comes along and boom. Like, I didn't have enough money yet. I was saving up, and then Christmas Day, I get the Nintendo Entertainment System from my parents. Unbelievable. And I was blown away by it. Sadly, though, but not so bad. I ended up getting the NES, but it was the one that came bundled with the Nintendo Player's Guide. I've talked quite extensively about the Nintendo Player's Guide. As you can see here, it's an amazing guide. I took it to school with me. I studied all the maps. It had all of like the details of each game. I was obsessed with this book. I still am, looking at the maps of Metroid, of Zelda, all of these great games. But I didn't get any games boxed in the system that Christmas. So my parents bought me Metroid, Rygar, and Mighty Bomb Jack on Christmas Day, and no Super Mario Brothers. And actually, what's funny is I never ended up owning Super Mario Brothers. I just would play it at my friend's house, and it finished the game that way. It's crazy that I never actually owned that game. But Metroid, boy, did I own that game, and I was obsessed with it. Opening that beautiful gray box with that beautiful artwork for the first time, putting that game in and hearing that music launch for the first time was amazing. It was incredibly difficult, but I would play that game every day all the way up through the summer of 1988. And I think that's when I finally beat the game. It took me maybe 7-8 months of continuous hard work to beat that game. But I did, and I beat Mother Brain, and it was an unbelievable experience to do that, but it was incredibly difficult. But I had my Nintendo Player's Guidebook, and I would study that. And then I remember taking a break from Metroid and playing Rygar. And another great game, really underappreciated game, but incredibly hard. And I think this is one of those games I'd pop in from time to time over the years because it was so difficult for my 1987-year-old brain to comprehend. I mean, at this point, I was, I guess, 10 years old. So to play Rygar with any kind of acuity was very, very difficult. And Mighty Bomb Jack, I guess if I would have read the manual and been more astute and actually read and understood what was happening in that game, I enjoyed it, but it didn't quite make any sense to my 10-year-old brain, Mighty Bomb Jack. And it's one of those games I'd like to go back as an adult and replay and see if it makes sense to me, but it didn't, and somehow Metroid made a lot of sense to me. So that was my first introduction to the Nintendo Entertainment System in my house, and it was just an absolute game changer for me. Then, of course, every year after that, I would ask for games for Christmas and was always looking forward to those perfectly wrapped rectangles under the tree. I knew, I could tell when it was a Nintendo game, and sometimes they would be put out ahead of time, from mom and dad or from mommy and daddy underneath the Christmas tree, and then other times they came from Santa, right? So if I saw those boxes under the tree, in the weeks leading up to Christmas, I would just sit there and study the box. I'm like, what game could this possibly be? What is this game? But there was one year, and I've told this story before on the show, in the lead up early December or so, I was super excited in the fall of this particular year of 1990 to get Dragon Warrior 2. I was obsessed with Dragon Warrior 1. Obsessed. And I don't even know how I got that game. My parents just got it for me for Christmas, and it changed my life. Playing an RPG like that was game changing for me. But it was when Dragon Warrior 2 came out that I was so obsessed with this game. And I knew that my parents had it, and I knew where they were hiding their presents in this little attic cove upstairs in the house. And I stayed home from school one day sick. And while they were at work, I went into this little attic cove and I saw Dragon Warrior 2 sitting there in its perfectly beautiful little box. And I meticulously opened it, because there's no cellophane wrappers on it, right? There was no shrink wrap. Opened it, took out the manual, and I just sat there in this attic, this cold little attic. It reminds me of Chevy Chase in Christmas Vacation. He's just wrapped. I would put on a coat. I don't know why I didn't think to just take it out of there. They're at work, but kids' brains, right? So I sat there just reading this manual. I couldn't wait for Christmas. Weeks would go by until I could finally get it on Christmas morning. And then, oh my God, when I finally got it on Christmas morning, I was off. Like, okay, we're done opening presents. Bye. Ran upstairs into the game room and just sat for hours playing this game. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was everything I loved about Dragon Warrior 1, but now expanded. I could get on a ship and I could go to different lands. It was big. It was huge. It took me forever. It was a massive, massive game. And but I just remember that time period and just being so obsessed with going up into the attic. And I would do that repeatedly. It wasn't just one sick day. You know, I knew they were coming. I get home from school at 3:30 or so. I knew they'd be home at like 5. Run right up there and study the Dragon Warrior 2 manual because I was just obsessed with that game. And, you know, right now I'm playing Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake. And when that music hit for the first time, I was like, oh, wave of nostalgia brought me back to that childhood, those childhood memories in the late 80s, early 90s. So yeah, I can't recommend Dragon Quest 3 enough to you guys. Perfect Christmas gift. In fact, I bought it for my daughter this year for Christmas, so hopefully she will love it. So that's the Nintendo Entertainment System for me. One of my fondest childhood memories of gaming on Christmas Day. And the game catalog that I had was phenomenal. Loved playing Kid Icarus, to Metroid, to Rygar, to all of those classic games in the Dragon Quest series as well. But then the Sega Genesis hits, and whoa, I was absolutely blown away. Christmas morning to receive the Sega Genesis with the packed-in, not-for-sale version of Sonic the Hedgehog. And I also got a couple of other games on that Christmas day, too. It wasn't just Sonic. I ended up getting Strider as well as Quackshot, starring Donald Duck, other games that I absolutely loved. But let's just start with Sonic the Hedgehog. I click that on, you hear that music for the first time, and the opening sequence. And the graphics, the sound just blew me away. I was a huge Mario fan, of course, and this was like transformative. Oh my gosh, I can zip around like this and just speed through these amazing levels and smash into enemies and coins flying everywhere. And I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing. I was zipping up into the air. Did I miss a whole bunch of stuff down there? Probably, but I don't know. I'm just a kid and I'm just having fun zooming around and having a blast. So Sonic the Hedgehog for me, many, many hours. But it's weird to me, like as much as I liked the game then, it just didn't captivate me in the way that Super Mario Brothers did. Playing Super Mario Brothers 1 and 2 and 3. I loved it, don't get me wrong. I did love it on Christmas morning, and I still have a great fondness for the Sonic games, but not in the way that I think some people became obsessed with it. They're like, oh my god, this is way better than Mario Brothers. I never felt that way, actually. I never really did. It always, to me, was Mario Brothers. I still to this day feel that way. Even when people are comparing like Astrobot and saying, I don't know, what is Nintendo gonna do? Like, I still feel that there's something so magical and special about Mario in a way that Sonic never really connected with me in that way. However, I'm saying again, I love that Christmas morning. And sitting up there in my little den on the carpet, on my brown carpet, wrapped in a blanket, playing Sonic all day and days after, after Christmas. Now, I mentioned I also got Strider and I got Quackshot, but I also got Revenge of Shinobi. So I got like a nice catalog of games on that Christmas day, and these games were transformative. Playing Strider, this unbelievable graphics and like action-packed platformer where I could use this sort of weird sword swiping Strider movement, to slide, and it was just amazing. I absolutely love that game, and that was another Christmas Day game that I just played continuously. I think there is something, though, when you get a bunch of games, you're less likely to sit and then just play one to kind of completion. You're kind of hopping between them, and that was what I was doing that Christmas morning, because I was playing Strider for a few hours, playing Sonic for a few hours, and then jumping over and playing Revenge of Shinobi for the first time and hearing that music, and oh my gosh, I could be a ninja? And not like the original NES Kung Fu. I'm talking like this was like I was taking karate at the time, so I was going to a dojo like once a week, and wait a minute, I could throw like throwing stars, and this looks great. Again, not like the old NES Kung Fu game. No, this was like amazing graphics, amazing music. And again, one of those games that I was just thrilled to get on Christmas morning and played hours and hours and hours. And then I was like, do I want to play like this Disney game, this like, Donald Duck game? I'll wait. I'll play that one like fourth. Yeah, I'll just wait. And then I put in Quackshot. And holy smokes, it's become one of my favorite Genesis games of all time. Absolutely love the music, love the gameplay, love the humor in it. Very, very funny. The fact that I'm using like a plunger to jump around and be able to jump off of the sides of like tombs in ancient Egypt on this quest. And I was such a huge DuckTales fan. So for this game to really kind of capture you going through these tombs and trying to find treasure and all of what I loved about the classic DuckTales, the Disney's DuckTales show, Quackshot has become one of my favorite games of all time. Here it is, the great box art for Quackshot as well. Love this, love this. And the Sega Genesis really became my first sort of couch co-op game, whether it was playing Star Control or wrestling games with my friends. We would sit for hours and play these games together. And the Sega Genesis really became my first couch co-op experience console. And Christmas Day, after I had gotten out, been able to play all my games, I'm like, all right, friends, come on over and let's play some games together. So a lot of my favorite memories of that console on Christmas Day, and even after that, came as a result of couch co-op, being able to sit there and play games together with your friends in the neighborhood. That to me was my first real experience doing that. And in a much bigger way, I think, than the Nintendo Entertainment System on Christmas Day. Flash forward to 1995. I was just heading off to college, graduating high school in 1995 from Wilson High School in Reading, Pennsylvania. And I would work the holidays at EB, at Electronics Boutique. So I imagine being, a young sort of going off to college kid, being surrounded by all of these video games and the launch of these new consoles, the launch of the PlayStation. It was a wonder for me. And when I worked at Electronics Boutique, imagine this, there I was as an employee, and we would get the catalogs, the Electronics Boutique catalogs that were, handed out. They were like 70 pages long too. And I would just page through these things, looking at all of the potential games to be able to play on the PS1. You get to see this CD-ROM entertainment listed here. And I used to go through this catalog and basically circle games that I would want and give this to my parents. Now that I actually work there and I could see this in action, but it was so funny to like look at these catalogs that would sit on the desk, and we would just page through these things for hours looking at these classic games. It was a wonder for me. And then also having all of these other games to choose from, but having no money as a broke, like off to college, kid. And, obviously during that Christmas working in a game store, I didn't get the PS1 at launch. So I had to wait till the Christmas of 1996. So I'm there working in a game store, seeing other people buying this system. But I have to admit, and I know some of you will yell at me about this, but I wasn't terribly excited about the launch games for the PlayStation. Yeah, you had like Twisted Metal, and we would play that in the store. I was like, this is fun. It wasn't for me. It wasn't like my, compared to some of my great games growing up, Metroid and all of these other games for Dragon Quest and all this stuff. It just didn't do it for me, and I really didn't feel like there was. Maybe I'm wrong, but there wasn't like great launch title games for the PS1 that I cared about. I'm sure there's great ones that you might have cared about. It didn't like captivate me in a way. So I kind of let that Christmas come and go, and I was still playing my Sega Genesis and still enjoying my NES. It's probably had to blow off some dust on it at that point. But I didn't get a PlayStation 1 until the following Christmas. And I come home for college that year, and yes, I was working at EB Games once again, because I would come home and work there. And my parents surprised me on Christmas Day with a PlayStation. And some of the games were just mind-blowing to me to be able to play these original PlayStation games. But I remember one of the games that I sat down and played was Soviet Strike. Oh my gosh, this Christmas, playing this game, bombing all of these like Russians and hitting all of these different targets and tanks and so forth, flying around as a helicopter was unbelievable. Like I'd never seen a game like this, and I was obsessed with this series. And sadly, I didn't even know that they had made a whole, there was like, I think a trilogy of these games. I only learned that recently hanging out at my retro game store. And in fact, the owner of the store gave this to me because I lost my original copy or sold it somewhere. So he gave this to me. I bought a bunch of other stuff and he just threw this in, said, here, you take it. But there's a whole bunch of other Soviet Strike games in this series. I think 3 maybe total. So I'm curious to check those games out. But then I opened Tomb Raider. Holy smokes. Now I was fully aware of this game, in my off to college brain. I knew all about Tomb Raider. It was all over my electronics boutique store, and I got Tomb Raider and Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. And I have to say Legacy of Kain got kind of put on the bottom of the pile because I'd played it for a little while and an action RPG following the vampire Kain on his quest for vengeance, but it never quite clicked for me, to be honest with you. I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, and I'm actually happy to go back and maybe revisit this now at some point, but no, for me, it was Tomb Raider. And I, again, was blown away by these graphics and this gameplay and the fact that I could navigate this tomb and shoot tigers and find treasure and, have to figure out what handhold to climb up these rock faces, and the music, the CD quality sound. I was blown away by Tomb Raider. And then, of course, Tomb Raider 2 and Tomb Raider 3, and I became a huge fan of the series over the years. And thrilled, by the way, that they just launched those remasters, which I picked up and was able to buy those limited edition collection all on one Switch cartridge, which is pretty crazy. But man, Tomb Raider on that Christmas, that whole Christmas, I remember sitting in my parents' living room because I had moved out. I moved off to college. So our game room was now transformed into my dad's office. It was no longer a game room. So I brought my PlayStation downstairs, hooked it up to the main parents' TV. And so for that entire Christmas, my parents basically didn't get to watch any television except on like Sundays for football. My dad would be like, I want to watch some football. Okay, can you turn off that thing? Can you turn off the game system? So I had to wait until they were done watching football or, whatever dancing show they were going to watch at that point. Who knows what was on TV at that point, until I could jump back on and play my PlayStation. And then my parents would go to bed and it'd be like, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and they were up and into bed. And I would sit up until 1 and 2 in the morning playing Tomb Raider, playing Soviet Strike. And it was one of the best Christmases ever because just being able to sit there, they had a fireplace, and I just remember the warmth of that room. And sitting there on the carpet, and my parents' cats were walking around the place, and just they're like, oh, you're going to sit here on the carpet and play? Got some pillows and blankets? I'm going to sit with you, and we're going to play these amazing games for hours and hours, these great classic PlayStation 1 games. Yeah, and then I kind of went into a black hole for about 15 years of gameplay. Like I didn't really play a lot of games. Yes, I got a PlayStation 2, but I didn't have a lot of games for it. And I was so focused, I think, on college and working on my career that I went into this like big kind of void for like 15 years. And it wasn't until about 2010, Christmas Day, sitting down for the first time with my son while he was playing Mario Odyssey for the first time. And I was helping him as Cappy, or he would be Cappy and I would be Mario. And just to see his face light up with this game on the TV for the first time. And he totally understood it. It was a real moment for me. And he was so excited. This was one of his main Christmas presents on Christmas Day, was Super Mario Odyssey. And I remember I didn't even talk about it with my wife, like in terms of like what games or what are we going to get our son this year? And, with some toys and whatever. And I was like, no, we have to get him his first Mario game. And that was it for him. Off to the races after that. And playing video games, and to be able to sit there by the fire. We had a mountain cabin up in the Pennsylvania woods, and to sit there that Christmas by the fireplace watching him play Mario Odyssey for the first time. And then it became the first game that he ever beat. A few months later, he walked into my office and he showed, Daddy, I just beat it. And the credits were rolling on the Nintendo Switch. And I was like, all right, buddy, you did it. You beat your first video game. You beat your first Mario game. And he had this huge smile on his face. I even took a picture of it, as you can see right here. So 2010 was kind of when I started getting back into playing video games, again, kind of loosely. And my wife bought me Skyrim to play on the PS4. That game, just absolutely blew me away. No, I'm actually joking about it. I never actually opened it. It's so funny. Like, I got some video games. She bought me some gifts, and I just never opened it. I just never played it. Because I don't know, I was just so focused on my career and taking care of my family that any free time I had, I was trying to be an entrepreneur. I mean, it was trying to build a business, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's a lot to say about having balance in your life, and I was just so obsessed about figuring that part of it out that like picking up my PlayStation 4 controllers just didn't happen all that often, very, very infrequently. And I never played Skyrim. I still have that disc. I still have it unopened. And at some point, I'm going to dive back into Skyrim now, a little bit later in my life, now that I've been fully back into games again, but she got that was a Christmas Day gift that sat unopened. It's kind of sad in a way, because if I could flash back to like my 1980s childhood brain, I would have ripped that game open and I would have been playing it for weeks. But a little bit older, you've got kids, I didn't end up playing it. So we're getting to the tail end of the experience here. So there was this long period where I just really wasn't playing games. I enjoyed buying them for my kids, and they were having a blast playing them on the Nintendo Switch. My son playing Zelda Breath of the Wild and beating that game. And then something snapped in me where I was like, you know what? I want to be a kid again. I don't want to be working so hard. I want to carve out some time to game again, something I absolutely love. And I saw it in my son's eyes, being able to play these games on Christmas. So it was Christmas a few years ago when I decided to go and buy Metroid Dread. And something changed in me at Christmas time. I played Metroid Dread that entire holiday season and then just became obsessed again. It was like going back to playing the original Metroid, and that same feeling I had back then opening that Nintendo Entertainment System on Christmas was the same feeling I had for just going to the store and buying my own copy of Metroid Dread in the few days before Christmas. And I sat there by the fire during the whole Christmas season and played Metroid Dread and fell in love with gaming all over again. So I really owe it to Metroid Dread getting me back into playing video games. And then I started playing Breath of the Wild, beat that. Then, then I was off to the races. But it was really those Christmases that are sort of like those pivotal moments in my sort of gaming history. Those moments that I'll remember forever. And to see, the light in my children's eyes playing some of these classic games and some of these new games, and those memories that I had opening those games on Christmas morning and thanking my parents for, all the hard work that they did in their lives to be able to afford those games and to give me that amazing experience. So now it's, for me, I'm trying to find the right games to pick for my kids for this Christmas. And I'm like, I know you're going to love this Eve. I know you're going to love this Kirby game, and giving them that same feeling that I had on those Christmas mornings many years ago. So my favorite time of year. I love it because now, that I work so hard, I'm able to take those few weeks off and just play some video games and enjoy the heck out of it. So this has been a lot of fun. And hat tip to my friend Johnny Millennium over at the Happy Console Gamer, because we were talking just about ideas for videos. And he said, I would love to hear your sort of Christmas memories about video games. And said, that is a great idea. And it was amazing because I really sat down one night after he and I talked about this, and I just sort of sketched out all of those moments, like, getting Legacy of Kain and Rygar and going through the years and looking through photos and trying to find old photos of this stuff. And it was just really a treat to walk down memory lane. So anyway, I'd love to hear your Christmas memories, and make them long. Make the comments long, because I want to read them down below. Let me know what are some of your fondest memories playing video games growing up, or when you opened that game on Christmas morning. What did you do? Did you get any sleep? Did you just stay up nonstop like I did playing Metroid and Kid Icarus and all of that stuff? I want to hear those stories, and I want to read all of them. So thank you guys for subscribing. Thanks for indulging me in a little Christmas nostalgia here, and we'll see you real soon.